The lost treasure of Captain Kidd, the name Captain William Kidd, drifts through history like a shadow, caught somewhere between hero and villain, truth and legend. He was not meant to be a pirate. In fact, Kidd began his career as a privateer, sanctioned by the English crown itself, hunting the enemies of the king across the wide oceans. But power, greed, and betrayal twist men into monsters, and by the time the world remembered his name, Kidd was branded not as a servant of the crown, but as a pirate cursed. The story of his lost treasure begins with blood. In 1698, Kidd captured a massive Armenian ship called the Quebec Merchant. Its hold overflowed with silks, opium, gold, and jewels, enough wealth to make every man aboard a king in his own right. But this act, though common among privateers, branded Kidd as an outlaw. The ship had belonged to allies of England, and his enemies wasted no time painting him as a pirate. From that day forward, Kidd's fate was sealed. The crown turned on him, the governors hunted him, and the sea itself seemed to spit his name back in fury. They say that on the nights when Kidd fled across the waters, he began to whisper to the ocean, asking for protection, bargaining with the dark. Sailors swore he was not just hiding treasure, but hiding something far worse. A pact he had made when he realized death was coming for him. When Kidd was finally captured and dragged back to London, he was tried, convicted, and condemned. At his execution in 1701, the rope snapped not once, but twice. The crowd gasped, some whispering it was the devil's hand sparing him. On the third attempt, the rope held, and Kidd swung until the life drained from his body. But before he died, he cursed the gold. He swore the fortune he had buried would never be claimed by mortal hands. He promised that any man who sought it would meet the same fate he had betrayed, hunted, and condemned. Some said his eyes burned with such fire that the hangman turned away, unable to look at him as he spoke. They say Kidd's body was tarred and hung in chains by the River Thames, a warning to all pirates. Yet even as his corpse rotted, ships whispered of treasure buried on secret islands, of maps carved into bone and hidden in old chests. In every port, men spoke of Kidd's lost fortune. 40 bars of gold, bags of silver, diamonds that glittered like stars. Some claimed it lay hidden on Gardiner's Island, off the coast of New York. Others swore it was buried deep in the Caribbean, guarded by tides that never stilled. But all who hunted it met ruin. Explorers vanished. Sailors drowned in calm waters. Treasure maps led to empty sand. Yet watchers swore they saw shadows digging in the night when no men were there. Some claimed they heard chains rattling beneath the earth, as though Kidd's ghost himself walked the shoreline, still guarding what he had sworn no man would take. And so the legend grew. The curse of Captain Kidd, the king's pirate who became the devil's treasure keeper. But curses are like storms. They do not fade. They wait. And there are always those reckless enough to chase them. The curse was only the beginning. Long after Kidd's body swayed on the gallows, whispers of his hidden map began to spread like fire across the colonies. No one could say for certain whether the pirate himself had drawn it, but fragments appeared in the strangest of places. Scraps of parchment with symbols no one could decipher, sailors' tales of a chest sealed in pitch, even rumors of coordinates etched into the lid of a barrel fished out of the sea. Each whisper carried the same promise. Somewhere, buried in sand or hidden in rock, lay the fortune of Captain Kidd. The most persistent tale centered on Gardiner's Island off the coast of New York. In 1699, Kidd supposedly buried chests of treasure there before sailing to Boston, where he was ultimately betrayed and captured. Some claimed the island's owners handed over what little they found to the crown, but the rest, bars of gold, piles of jewels, and blood-stained silver, remained hidden. Islanders spoke of strange sounds in the night, shovels striking earth, lanterns glowing where no man walked. Other whispers pointed farther afield. Nova Scotia's windswept coast, the jungles of Madagascar, remote keys in the Caribbean. Each story grew darker the farther it strayed from shore. In Jamaica, men swore that maps to Kidd's treasure were written in blood, cursed so that anyone who gazed upon them too long would dream of drowning. In Barbados, sailors claimed to see a phantom ship circling the reefs, its lantern glowing red, vanishing when they tried to follow. But perhaps the most chilling whispers came not from distant islands but from those who had sought the treasure themselves. In 1750, a crew of fortune-seekers dug feverishly through the sands of Block Island, convinced they had found Kidd's resting place for his gold. They unearthed nothing but a coffin, rotting, lid broken, yet empty of bone. That night, every man swore he saw a figure watching them from the surf, tall, shadowed, with chains dripping from his arms. By dawn, 2 of them were gone, their bodies never recovered. Another story tells of a New England farmer who uncovered a chest while plowing a field. The chest was bound in iron, heavy enough that it took 3 men to drag it. When they cracked it open, the air filled with the stench of sulfur, and inside, instead of gold, they found blackened bones and a dagger rusted to its hilt. The farmer went mad within a week, muttering Kidd's name until he hanged himself from his barn rafters. The whispers grew louder with every failed hunt. The maps that surfaced always seemed incomplete, the trails leading to nowhere or worse, to places that swallowed men whole. And still, treasure hunters returned, lured by the promise of endless riches, ignoring the warnings etched in Kidd's curse. For it was said that the true map, the one that pointed directly to the heart of the treasure, had never left Kidd's possession. That he had hidden it in a place no man could reach, guarded by something not of this world. And those who still chase the whispers swear the map is not ink on paper. It is written in death. Every hunter of Kidd's treasure eventually hears the same warning. The islands themselves do not want to give it up. They lure you close with calm shores, then devour you whole. In 1795, 3 boys on Nova Scotia's Oak Island discovered a strange depression in the ground beneath an old oak tree. The earth was softer there, as though disturbed long ago. They dug and soon struck wood, then stone, then another layer of wood below that. It was a pit unlike anything they had ever seen, built as if by unseen hands. The deeper they went, the stranger it became, logs placed with precision, markings cut into the stone, hints of something buried far below. But the island fought back. Each attempt to reach the bottom ended in disaster. Flood tunnels opened as if the earth itself was bleeding seawater, drowning men in the dark. Pickaxes shattered against stone walls where none should have been. Tools vanished, only to reappear days later in places no one had touched. Those who worked the pit swore they heard chains clanking deep beneath their feet. And on some nights, a voice carried through the earth, low, guttural, mocking. The Oak Island pit claimed lives, fortunes, and sanity. Yet the legend clung to it like barnacles, and many whispered that Kidd himself had buried part of his hoard there, sealing it with curses stronger than any lock. But Oak Island was not alone. Farther south, in the Caribbean, sailors whispered of uncharted keys where fireflies glowed like lanterns and the sand seemed to shift beneath your feet. On one such island, an expedition in 1828 uncovered a stone chest carved with the initials WK. When they pried it open, they found nothing but seawater and the bones of a hand still clutching a rusted coin. Within hours, half the men were dead. One drowned in a shallow pool, another vanished into the jungle, and a third was found strangled in his hammock, though no rope was tied. The survivors fled, swearing the island itself had come alive. In Madagascar, where Kidd once anchored, entire crews disappeared chasing rumors of treasure hidden in caves that flooded with each tide. Local tribes refused to approach the coves, claiming they were guarded by spirits with eyes like burning coals. One elder told explorers that Kidd had bargained with those spirits, trading his soul for a promise that his gold would never be stolen. And then there was Gardiner's Island. Even today, the family who owns it speaks little of the pirates' presence, though records prove Kidd did bury treasure there. The small portion that was recovered, gold candlesticks, bars of silver, silks, was given to the crown. But the locals whisper that Kidd buried more, deeper, and that when the ground was disturbed again, strange fires broke out in the fields, flames with no source that died as suddenly as they appeared. Islands swallowed men, pits drowned them, maps led them in circles until hunger and madness claimed them. Yet still the hunters came, digging, sailing, searching. Because no matter how many bones the sea took, no matter how many voices warned them to stop, the promise of Captain Kidd's treasure was louder than the fear. And if the islands swallowed the greedy, perhaps that was because Kidd wanted them to. The deeper the hunt for Kidd's treasure went, the darker the stories became. By the mid-1800s, the search was no longer about fortune. It was about survival, obsession, and blood. Treasure hunters began to notice a pattern. Every serious expedition, no matter how well-equipped, ended with death. Some drowned in sudden storms that seemed to rise from calm seas. Others vanished into jungles where their camps were later found untouched, fires still burning, food still warm, but every man gone. And those who returned were often worse off than the dead, haunted, broken, their minds shattered by something they refused to describe. One such account came from the coast of Hispaniola. A group of 6 men unearthed a chest bound with iron and carved with strange symbols. They carried it up the beach, but when they tried to force it open, one of them fell to the ground, choking as though invisible hands wrapped around his throat. The others panicked and fled, leaving both chest and comrade behind. When they returned at dawn, the chest was gone. All that remained was a single trail of blood leading into the sea, as though the ocean itself had dragged the man away. In the 1890s, a prospector on Long Island claimed he had found Kidd's hiding place after months of research. He dug beneath a crooked tree and struck metal. His lantern revealed a box studded with corroded nails. But before he could lift it, the earth beneath him gave way. He was swallowed whole into a pit of water and mud. His companions tried to save him, but his screams echoed for only seconds before silence returned. When they drained the whole days later, there was no sign of the man or the box. It was as though Kidd's treasure demanded a price. The belief in blood sacrifice became so strong that some hunters willingly tried to offer it. In one chilling case, an expedition leader in 1902 slit the throat of a goat over the sand, claiming the offering would appease the spirit guarding the hoard. That night, his men woke to find his tent empty, the sand around it soaked in blood, but with no body to be found. Others spoke of hearing Kidd's voice itself, a growling whisper carried on the wind, warning them to leave. Sailors described seeing a figure standing on the shore, torch in hand, the outline of a noose swaying at his neck. On ships anchored too close to rumored treasure sites, chains rattled on the deck though no one moved them, and lanterns swung though the air was still. Gold, jewels, silver, yes, they might be buried. But if Kidd cursed them, then what were they really? Wealth to the greedy, or bait to lure men into the same trap that claimed Kidd's soul? By the turn of the century, the legend was no longer about hidden riches. It was about survival against something unseen, something that killed in silence and vanished without trace. And yet, even with blood in the sand, the world's hunger only grew stronger. Because if even a fraction of Kidd's fortune remained, it was worth kingdoms. But those who went looking never asked the most dangerous question. What if the treasure itself wasn't meant to be found? Centuries have passed since Captain Kidd swung from the gallows, but his shadow has never left the world. From the muddy pits of Nova Scotia to the burning sands of the Caribbean, his legend continues to call men toward ruin. And perhaps that is the cruelest trick of all, that the promise of riches has outlived the pirate himself, stronger than any fleet or empire. In the 20th century, modern treasure hunters arrived with machines, divers, and dynamite. They believed technology would conquer superstition, that sonar could pierce the secrets of the earth, and that dynamite could blast apart any barrier Kidd had built. But the results were the same. One expedition off Madagascar mapped a submerged cavern that locals swore was Kidd's final hiding place. Divers descended into the darkness, their lights cutting across jagged rock. What they found were iron rings drilled into the stone, as if meant to hold something in place long ago. One diver surfaced clutching a rusted shard of a blade, but before he could speak, he collapsed on the deck, blood running from his nose and ears. He never regained consciousness. His companions refused to return below. On Oak Island, Machines bored deeper into the money pit, pulling up fragments of gold chain and splinters of parchment. Each discovery reignited the obsession, yet always ended in catastrophe. Cave-ins, floods, and even explosions claimed the lives of those who pressed too far. As one worker scrawled in his journal before abandoning the site, "It is not a pit, it is a grave." Even now, whispers say that Kidd's treasure is out there, waiting. But the stories have shifted. It is no longer spoken of as a fortune to be claimed, but as a curse to be avoided. Fishermen warn their children never to dig if they find strange markings in the sand. Old sailors still swear they've seen a ghostly figure pacing the shores on moonless nights, his eyes glowing like embers, his chains dragging deep grooves into the earth. And yet, some believe the greatest horror is not that the treasure remains lost. It is that one day someone will find it. For Kidd's curse was not merely a warning, it was a promise. He vowed that any who touched his gold would share his fate. What if that treasure is not merely coins and jewels, but a prison? What if it holds something Kidd bound to the earth, something he could not destroy, only bury? Imagine a chest cracked open after centuries of silence, the air spilling out black and foul. Imagine the world realizing too late that the gold of a dead pirate was only bait, and that the true treasure was never meant to be unearthed. Perhaps that is why the sea has swallowed maps, why the islands collapse, why blood stains the sand. Not because Kidd wants to keep his fortune, but because he is still guarding us from it. The legend endures because the treasure endures. And the treasure endures because it was never meant to be touched. The lost treasure of Captain Kidd is not lost at all. It is waiting,